Hey everybody, I am Jules,
Hi.
and I am your friendly neighborhood film techie, and we are going to be watching a really cool film today, and I'm going to introduce Becky Lunig. Let me spotlight you. There we go. And while you introduce, I'm going to go find our filmmaker so I can spotlight them too.
I don't think we've seen.
I'm the filmmaker.
Hi,
Oh, there you
everyone.
are. Let me spotlight you as well.
I
There
wasn't
we go.
expecting, I didn't know that I was going to be part of this. So really what I want
Oh, okay.
I want to quickly introduce Ann Wright. Ann, can you introduce Leanne?
Yes, I would be thrilled to.
Okay.
Welcome everyone to the last day of the Veterans for Peace annual convention. It's been a great convention, and we are so honored to have Deann Borshay, who is the director of a wonderful film called Crossings, and it's about our going to North Korea in 2015. And it's a really fine film. Could I ask everyone to mute themselves though, so that we won't have interference from our wonderful audience who is here. So Leanne, please tell us more about the film to introduce it.
Hi, everyone. Let's see. I just want to make sure I'm not muted. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Deann Borshay Liem, and thank you so much for inviting the film to screen at this amazing convention. It's a true honor to be here with you today. I had an opportunity to watch the Peace Warriors from the Korean War session that Ann moderated on Friday, and was just very moved by the stories that the panelists shared, especially what Jack Doxey expressed in his poem, I Saw Myself in My Enemy, and also Congressman Pete McCloskey's recollections of a North Korean soldier killed by US forces, and seeing in the pocket of that soldier's uniform pictures of his very large Korean family. And these stories humanize, for me, they humanize both sides of the war, which in war is very difficult to do. These stories really resonated with me because this idea of seeing humanity in our enemy is actually a key theme in the film Crossings, which we're going to be watching this morning. Just a quick introduction to myself. I was actually born in South Korea 4 years after the signing of the Korean War armistice. So that was the armistice was signed in 1953. I was born in 1957. And at the age of 8, I was actually adopted by an American family and grew up in California. And I was told that I was adopted because I was a war orphan, a Korean War orphan. And it wasn't until years later that that images of a Korean family actually began to appear in my dreams. And eventually I learned that those images were actually not dreams, but memories of my Korean birth family, a family that had lived through the Japanese colonial period and survived the Korean War, and was led by a widowed mother with 5 children. So that's how this years-long, actually decades-long journey to reunite with my birth family started. And along the way, I've made a number of films about Korean transnational adoption, as well as films about the Korean War, projects about the Korean War. And I really came to understand that my separation from my Korean family through international adoption took place against this larger backdrop of war and national division. And that my intense yearning as a young person to search for and meet my Korean birth family mirrored those of hundreds of thousands of divided families throughout the Korean peninsula who really long to see their loved ones again, but who are not able to because of the unended war and the ongoing division. So that's why when I had the opportunity to film these 30 women who decide to go to North Korea and cross the DMZ into South Korea to call for peace and the reunification of divided Korean families, I immediately agreed. As you know, the Korean War never ended. The fighting ended with the signing of the armistice in 1953, but no peace treaty was ever signed. And this really goes to the crux of the current tensions between North Korea and the United States. In many ways, the war is still being waged through policies of isolation, sanctions, war games, and threats of military strikes, and now, of course, nuclear war. And while the Korean War is really seared into the national consciousness of people in both North and South Korea, in the United States, the war is referred to often as the, quote, forgotten war. So Crossings is, I really see it as a kind of an intervention in how we as an American public think about and narrate the Korean War. The film follows these 30 remarkable women peacemakers. I call them the badass women who travel to North Korea and cross the DMZ from the north to the south. And the group is organized by Christine Ahn and includes Gloria Steinem, 2 Nobel Peace Laureates, our own Anne Wright, and a diverse cohort of women from around the world. So through their experiences, the film not only reminds us that the war never ended, but also challenges us to acknowledge the US role in the war and in perpetuating the division of Korea. It was a deeply meaningful experience making the film, and I hope you will find it equally meaningful to watch it. Just a couple of potential trigger warnings. The early part of the film does include archival images of bombing and death and destruction from the war itself. And a trigger warning for some, maybe not all of you, but the film does begin with Donald Trump's voice and a clip of Lindsey Graham. So don't let that put you off. Okay, so the way that we are going to actually screen the film is that I'm going to put a link into the chat, and I'm going to do that right now. And what you can do, does everybody see the link? Hopefully, it's a Vimeo link. And what you can do is just click that link, and that will automatically open a new window on your computer that will go directly to the film. There's no password that's needed. And you're going to watch the film in this new window in Vimeo, because it will play back much better than if I screen it on Zoom. And then keep your Zoom open, but mute your audio. And at the end of the film, come back and we will have a Q&A with Anne and myself. If you have any problems, please put that on the chat. I hope everybody.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed that movie and found it very, very moving, as well as remarkable on the Korean War history that's in it, and then the efforts for peace. And we'd like to now turn it over to Deann, the director of this film. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll respond to it. Deann, do you want to turn on your camera?
I can't seem to turn on my camera. I think the host has to turn it on.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. I think I turned it off because we were, sorry about that. Hold on.
Of course, no problem. And Anne, I hope you will join me in participating in this Q&A, since you were a key part of the 2015 journey.
You're most kind. I'll be right here to help in any way.
Okay. And okay, so I have my camera on, and Anne, can we spotlight both Anne and myself? Great. Thank you. And yes, thank you for watching the film. I hope you were able to watch it okay. It's hard to tell sometimes on Zoom or on Vimeo how everything is going, but I appreciate you all watching and being here with us. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand or chime in, unmute your audio, and feel free to ask whatever questions you'd like.
Perhaps you could start out with if Veterans for Peace chapters around the country would like to host a showing of this, what is the timeline in your film festivals and other things where this might be available for them to show to our communities?
Yes, thanks for asking that, Anne. So Crossings is actually on the festival circuit currently, and we've just started a national and international impact campaign to bring the film to communities across the country, especially in the US, but around the world. And we are partnering with a variety of community organizations, including hopefully with Veterans for Peace, local chapters. And our goal is to have 100 screenings over the next year. We've already had, by the end of this year, we will have had about 30 screenings already. So that's a great start. Next year is the 70th anniversary of the Korean War, signing of the Korean War armistice. So we're July 27th, 2023. And we're trying to mobilize our efforts to build up to that 70th anniversary, the significant anniversary, to draw public attention to the unended war and the need for a formal peace agreement. And we would love for all of the Veterans for Peace chapters, or as many as are interested, to host a screening in your local community. And part of our impact campaign includes providing a viewer's guide, a whole toolkit that of course includes the film and any technical support to help do that. And you'll see that in the chat is a note from Pearl Park, our Crossings impact producer. You can like us on Facebook, and you can contact us on at Crossings at mufilms.org if you would like to join our campaign.
Mhm. Let's see, I don't see any questions. Well, let's see, Nate
Had one
said,
person, I think a person, was there somebody who raised their hand?
Yes, that's me,
Okay.
Nate Goldstein from Boston. My question, I thought it was a terrific film. I watched on Vimeo. Unfortunately, I still have about 20 minutes left, but I wanted to come back here. I
Sure.
got some delays, but the quality in Vimeo was excellent. Will it be available on Vimeo going forward beyond today?
You know, what we're trying to do is, no, not publicly yet. It's still on the festival circuit, and we're releasing it slowly to different cities. And hopefully it will be, there will be a national release of the film on the 70th anniversary, where it'll be available to everybody on July 27th, 2023. In the meanwhile, we do have some screenings coming up. For the East Bay and Bay Area chapters of Veterans for Peace, please come out to the United Nations Association Film Festival. It'll be in Palo Alto in October. And if you go to the United Nations Association Film Festival website, they haven't announced the date yet, but it will be between October 20th and 30th. For the Massachusetts and Boston Veterans for Peace chapters, there will be a screening on October 21st or 22nd in Boston as part of the Boston Asian Film Festival. And for the San Diego chapter, there will be a screening in San Diego as part of the San Diego Asian Festival in early November. So if people don't mind, perhaps we could send an email out to all of the participants today to notify you of upcoming screenings, and then when the film will actually be available to communities across the country. And if I could just share for a brief moment my screen, I would love to just share you the information about our impact campaign, and that has the QR code and info in case you would like to contact us. I'm just going to share quickly. So this is our little ad that I think you saw at the beginning of the film, but you'll see here that we'd love for you to host the screening. Down here is crossings@mufilms.org. Please email us at that email address, and we will answer you right away if you're interested in screening the film. Any kind of special event is welcome in your local community. You can follow us on Facebook, and you can also go to mufilms.org to get more info about the film and screening updates. I think we had another question.
Yeah, not so much a question. Well, I guess a little bit of both. My name is Deann Borshay. I'm with Veterans for Peace, Chapter 72 in Portland, Oregon.
Great.
One is that I'm close friends with Marty Hart Landsberg, who's a professor at Lewis and Clark College.
Yes.
and considered an expert on the economies of Korea and around the world. So he's done a number of talks and hosted people from the delegation that went to Korea. So I could see where we could hold a showing probably at Lewis and Clark or at Portland State University, where I have my alma mater, with our local chapter of Veterans for Peace. How do we arrange that?
Fantastic.
with
Please email us at crossings@mufilms.org, and just remind me your name and we will arrange it. Marty is a friend and is part of the Korea Policy Institute. He would be a fantastic convener and moderator, etc., as well as you would be. And we would love to bring it there and to Lewis and Clark. Yeah, please email us and we will be in touch with you right away to schedule something. We're starting a fall tour. It's a festival tour primarily, but we are also doing some educational screenings. Next spring and into the summer, we will be doing an intensive educational and community tour. So that would be great to schedule it within that time frame. Okay, I think we also have a question from Lola.
Yeah, it's not exactly a question. I am extremely grateful to be shown this film. I cried through a lot of it. It really touches me. And we have in Santa Fe, where I live, we have an independent international film festival. It's too late to get into this one. Probably it's like next, it's like the first week of October. But I will investigate between our chapter and the film festival folks if we can have anything. And I just want to say that it is the forgotten war. People do not know about this. It's just, veterans do. I realize that, but I would say generally, my basic education on the Korean War probably came from MASH.
Yes.
And that I come from a family that believes in peace. So I've always been working for peace in my life. But now it's a lot closer. My accountant is Korean. And, she is now here, but her family is in Korea. And somebody who works for me to help me with the cats is from Japan and is absolutely horrified at what the Japanese government did. So I'm getting input, and my caring has been amplified. And I just want to thank Veterans for Peace for showing this, and thank you, and for going on this trip and being, the steadfast, leader and anchorer that you are, as well as your eloquence. I send love and light to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I am, as a Korean person, Korean American, I'm constantly, just can't comprehend why the Korean War is referred in this country as the forgotten war. And I think that's part of my motivation for making this film is to really challenge that idea. It's certainly not forgotten by people who lived through it. And their children, that's millions of people, certainly not forgotten by the veterans who fought in it. We need to change the master narrative in this country so that we not only remember the way in which the war has human dimensions in the real lives of all of us who've been impacted by it, but also the way in which we need to change policy so that we can bring a formal end and recognize our own government's responsibility and power to bring an end to it. So thank you for sharing that.
And I think Jules, Nate, and Cynthia all have questions.
And John Doxey just raised his physical hand to go after Cynthia, I think. So I was also very emotional about the film, the war stuff, but honestly, I just wanted to say thank you as a woman, like showing this, like you can like everybody's talking about showing this in their VFP chapters. Also, if you're a part of a women's group, this would be a great film to show to that group as well. I have a group here that I'm going to talk to about and see if they would like to do it. But like, just, I was very moved by the group of women and the power that you all had together. I thought that was really cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Jules. Thank you. And that would be great. Yes, women's groups, community groups, for sure. And let's be in touch and organize an event with your groups, Joel. Thank you.
And I think Nate is next.
Yeah, I had a second question. Is it possible to make the film public on that link for a few more days so that people, well, first off, so people like me can finish watching it, but also
Sure.
word of mouth will get around in via P, I'm sure, you know, later today or whatever, so other people could watch it for just for a couple more days. Is that possible?
Sure. I'll keep the link live as is for 48 hours. How's that?
Great, fantastic.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you. Cynthia? I think you're still muted.
How about that? Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can
There
hear
you go.
Thank you. I was really struck by the scene where Trump was meeting with the North Korean leader and they were going to sign a peace agreement. And then it suddenly changed. And I would love, Anne, for you to comment on what you think the reason for that was and whether there's any chance of that actually happening. Thank you so much.
2 words, John Bolton. It was Trump's advisors that took him off that path. And it's a tragic thing because it was so close and yet didn't happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Jack Doxey.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Jack is one of our
okay.
Korean War veterans and spoke on our panel on Friday. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Jack.
I was very honored to be a panelist on that. And I just want to say, this is the first time I viewed this film, and I was, as a Korean veteran, I was really very moved by the entire thing. I like to thank Ann and Dean and all the other people who were responsible for putting this on. I do know that when I came back from Korea, it was so vivid in my mind, and I wanted to talk about it. And just the people in the United States were kind of sanitized of the war, and they actually would tell me, "Don't talk about that. You know, just let's move on. Let's just move on." So I was left kind of empty to express my feelings and emotions and things like that. I did it as much as possible, but quite frankly, I think the American public was kind of sanitized of that. Let the arms dealers and the people who are making the money go about this terrible war and continue to do it and distract the people. I think the key word in the world today is separation. And I think when you separate people, you become suspicious of people. When you become suspicious of people, you become angry of people. When you become angry of people, you have justification for hating people. And when you hate people, you have the ultimate justification to go out and kill them. And we have to change that narrative. What we have to do is talk about unification and not separation. And I think that this movie is extremely important. I know that the San Diego chapter is, we're very active. And I know that they will grasp onto this and do everything that they can to promote it. But once again, the women of the world, we thank you. The men have tried time and time again to do things in the world. And quite frankly, many of the leaders have screwed up royally. And it's time for the women to really take over, because they had that natural intuitive love for mankind. And it's there, it's palpable, and it was showing in the movie. So
Thank
once
you.
again, I'd like to thank both of you and all the other people that were responsible for the making of this. This is a historic film. It really is. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much. I was very moved by your sharing in the panel on Friday, and I hope that you'll continue to share your story. I know you have, and we'll hope you will continue to do so. I think sharing our stories of transformation, I feel like Crossings also has, it's a story of transformation. And I think that they say wars are always fought twice, first on the battlefield, then a second time in memory. In many ways, we are, with the Korean War, we are battling sort of the memory industrial complex, in the sense that we have to control the narrative of what this war is about. And to the extent that we can share our personal stories and stories of human connection, I feel like that's what you did in the panel and through your poetry. And I hope that that is conveyed in this film. We will be bringing the film to San Diego. And if I may contact you and get the local San Diego chapter to come to the screening, that would be amazing. And maybe be a host to a co-host to the screening, that would be fantastic.
And if I could just
Wonderful.
mention that we have 2 other Korean War veterans that are on the webinar. Woody Powell, who's from St. Louis, is on the webinar, and Stan Levin, who's also from San Diego, are on the webinar. So we thank you folks for being with us today. And I think we do have a couple of more questions. Let's see. Larry SR, I don't know what that means, but
Larry Gilbert.
Larry Gilbert. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I was with you in Nevada last September.
Yes, indeed.
I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. I'm here in Maine this summer with the Maine chapter, and I'm co-coordinator of the chapter in the Villages, Florida, chapter 136.
Oh, great.
But I've read this book called If Nuns Ruled the World, and it features 10 nuns, one of which is Sister Simone Campbell. Remember Nuns on the Bus?
Yes.
Sister Helen Prejean of Dead Man Walking, and so on. And I'm firmly convinced that if negotiations were to be between women instead of men, that we could achieve peace so much quicker. There's a thing about a motherly instinct or whatever, but you take the bravado out of it, and women can come together and achieve peace. And so I would like to see that whenever there are peace negotiations, that it be strictly women doing the negotiations. I think we would achieve peace a lot quicker. Just my comment.
Thanks, Larry. And as is mentioned in the comments, you have to be careful of which women it is, because we do have some women warmongers around us. How about Jim Swartz next?
Yes, thank you, Ann. I had a question, but I had about the showing the film. If Deann or Ann or somebody, if we were arranged here in Rochester, our chapter to present it, would possibly someone be, one or two of you or other activists, be available for to zoom in for a Q&A after we showed that? That's my question. But first I wanted to comment. on what Ann has said. What surprised me in the film, which I never saw before, was the North Korean response to the second meeting and the lies. And yes, and I read that horrible book, The Room Where It Happened, Bolton. Oh my God, I was ready to throw up reading him. And you're right, he a warmonger who destroyed the negotiations, and he takes credit for it. But the response that you showed, and I'm so glad you had that in the film, because I do not remember seeing on any of the newscasts the rebuttal of the way that negotiation fell apart, and that was excellent. So come back and my question about would somebody be available if, and I noticed Mary Beth Knowles is on here, and she's the treasurer of my chapter, and absolutely one of the greatest activists in my chapter. So I'm sure she would be interested in bringing it up with our board to try to show this. So coming back to my question, if we do, would somebody be able to zoom in and take Q&A or even comment on it?
Yeah, absolutely. Zoom is easy to do. So absolutely, we can, I mean, I can certainly try to, make time to do that, and we can see who might be available to Zoom in. In person might be harder, but please just ask, and we'll do our best to accommodate what you would like to do for your local screening. I'm glad you mentioned that about the Hanoi and the North Korean foreign minister's response. And I totally agree with you that in the post-Hanoi press covering of what happened, so much of the press, especially in the West, focused on Donald Trump's comment that the North Koreans wanted all the sanctions lifted. And that was it. That was like the main thing that was repeated by Western media. And you never actually hear North Korean people speak in the news, in American news. You never hear their voices. If you see them at all, they're they're not subtitled, they're voice dubbed. And I was very struck by what the North Koreans said, because they called a press conference in the middle of the night to respond to Donald Trump because of the way that the whole news media was framing what had happened. And the fact that they called this press conference in the middle of the night, and they actually laid out what their actual demands or what their actual asks were, which, in many ways it was this step-by-step phased approach, requesting lifting of sanctions that really just affected everyday people's lives. The sanctions have such a huge humanitarian impact on everyday North Korean people. And they were asking for the lifting of a set of sanctions, UN sanctions, that affect people's livelihoods. And anyway, so I felt it very important to include that in the film, and I'm glad that that resonated with you. So thank you for making that note.
Thank you again.
Two more or three more questions. Let's go to Jackie first, then we'll go to Mike and then Dwight. Jackie, go ahead. And you're still muted.
Thank you, Deann, for making this beautiful film. I cried. Was very moved by the film and your skill. My question has to do with the sanctions, so I'm glad that you just raised that. And what is the current state of the sanctions, and what is the extent of the sanctions? And was that really true? Was that really the issue that Trump reneged, was the sanctions, or what? And if not, what are the conditions that the U.S. have laid out as a condition of getting the sanctions lifted? Thanks.
Well, so there are both UN sanctions and US sanctions, and the specific sanctions that the North Koreans had that identified in Hanoi had to do with, I think it was 5 sanctions and the UN, from the UN, and all the sanctions are in place currently. actually, because of time factors, and I don't know if you have access to the sanctions report that was issued by Women Cross DMZ. Maybe Pearl, if you're online and you're able to link to the Women Cross DMZ sanctions report, it's an excellent resource that Christine Ahn's organization, Women Cross DMZ, issued a year or so ago, and it has the background of all of the sanctions in the current situation and the impact on, in particular, women and children and families. So if,
Yeah,
there,
I'll
okay,
put it
so
up
Pearl, okay, thank you.
Mhm. Um,
And the
Lem-
condition that the US has put on lifting of the sanctions?
I mean, essentially, the policy has been denuclearization first and everything else later. And so that's the position that essentially Trump, reverted to in Hanoi, and which has been the position for decades. So that still stands. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, Mike Marceau from Washington, DC.
Hey, everyone. Good to be with you this weekend with the convention. Congratulations on the film. That was pretty moving. I personally was watching the interactions between the women one-on-one with the private citizens and not the official meetings. That's where the real emotions came into play for me. I was part of a delegation to Vietnam in 2012, a VFP delegation, and although it was on a much smaller scale, the reaction of the Vietnamese people on both sides of the former border was pretty moving to me, and that was a great experience. But I thought toward the end of the film there was a brief mention of some proposed legislation on this issue, and I was wondering, number one, if that's the case, maybe we could organize a VFP call-in day where we would have hundreds of VFP members from all across the country calling their senators and their representatives to support the legislation, whatever it is, about ending the war and actually establishing a peace treaty. So. And I'll look forward to the film coming to the East Coast around the DC area. And if I can help publicize it and get the word out, I'd be glad to do that. So thanks again.
That would be great. Thank you. Yes, there are 3 bills currently, and one of them is HR 3446. It's the Peace on the Korean Peninsula Act. And if you go to actually womencrossdmz.org, you can see all of the different, the 3 bills, and it would be great. You can actually go onto those links and write directly to your congressperson in support of those, and encourage your congressperson to support their bills. Also, the Korea Peace Grassroots Network, a Korea Peace Now Grassroots Network, hosts an annual advocacy week, which is amazing. It's hundreds of American citizens that gather together, organize, get some training, and speak to and coordinate direct meetings with their local congresspeople. And I participated, Anne, as part of it. And it's really an amazing way for us to tell our stories to our local representatives. And if you would like to be part of that, we can also send information about that to all of today's participants, and be great to. And yes, if VFP chapters could organize some direct action as Veterans for Peace, I think that would be incredible.
And if I could mention, we do publicize the Korea Advocacy Week through Veterans for Peace. So keep on the lookout. I've just put in the chat, I think it's the link from last year, but we as the Korea Peace Campaign of Veterans for Peace try to be very active in that Korea Advocacy Week. So Mike will make sure that you get the information for it. Okay, next we have Dwight, and then we'll have Dan after that. Go ahead, Dwight.
All right, I just have a comment and a quick question. I spent 5 years in the submarine service in 1975 through 1980, and I had the fortune and misfortune of serving from Pearl Harbor, and I patrolled 4 times off of North Korea and South Korea and Vladivostok, Russia. And we were over there defending America, you know, as young 20-year-olds. And we were out there to protect us from nuclear devastation. And what I discovered was, you know, everything since then is way further from that truth and that feeling. And as a young man, I spent that time off of Korea, and I had grown up in an international family. My dad was a diplomat, and I grew up in Europe and Asia and graduated from high school in Hong Kong. So it was very strange for me to actually be in a submarine full of young men who had a very, very different view of Asia than I did. And it was, so to see your film with so many powerful women working together was very touching to me, having my history and I've studied Korea and the relationship and the economics and all the things we care about for many, well, for decades. And so I just wanted to say how much I really appreciate your efforts. But the question I have is this. You know, I recall back when in Liberia, when they were having the Civil War, and the women finally decided after so many decades of losing their men and their children and their families, they would go on a sex strike. Does anybody remember that?
Yes.
The women said, we're not going to have relations with you guys until you stop this war. And guess what? The power of procreation won over, and they finally did stop within 6 months, as I recall. And now Liberia has many women in their government. The president and the vice president, I believe, are women. I'm not sure about the absolute current situation, but I seem to recall that they had about 70% women finally. It might be because a lot of the men have been killed off, but sometimes you have to be creative. So I'm just wondering if that has ever occurred to any other of the women's peace groups, that perhaps that angle or a new modern way of doing that might work. And I want some women ruling around the world for a change. I'm all for that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. That was part of their strategy. I think the Liberian women, there's really creative strategies, and that was one part of their thinking. I think they also did so many amazing actions and brought together women from all diverse backgrounds. And so it was a variety of different actions that led eventually to the women's voices being heard in Liberia.
And if I could mention, one of the leaders of that movement, Lima Gobi, was on our delegation. She was one of the women that is highlighted in the movie, and also Abigail
Disney,
who actually made the film about that women's movement in Liberia, was also on our delegation.
Yes, I would recommend that movie highly. It's called Pray the Devil Back to Hell. And the main protagonist is Lema, and it's a whole history of the Liberian women's peace movement. It's an excellent, excellent film. It will get you so riled up and ready to take action. It's a very inspiring film.
Let's go next to Dan Shea was on for a minute with a question, but I'm not sure he's here. But let's go to Bill Habernack next, and then Jules after that.
You going for me? Okay. I just wanted to add a couple of things here. First of all, I was very moved by the film, not just the politics of it, but actually the emotions there, because it also brought tears to my eyes. So there's just the understanding and the power of each person's stories. Now, I've been on delegations with BFP, so I've been on delegations with Ann. We were at Jeju Island together and in Okinawa, and we were at the 50th anniversary of the My Lai massacre. These were, as a Vietnam veteran, I've I feel the similar pains of the war that happened in Vietnam. In fact, there are many Koreans that served in Vietnam, and I was at an Agent Orange conference in 2006 where we had Korean soldiers who came in who were suffering from Agent Orange. But I also understand that some of the first uses of napalm and Agent Orange were in Korea. People don't talk about that. When people mention the stuff about Donald Trump and the close to how close we came to a peace agreement, Bolton certainly was somebody who disrupted it. But you have to also look at between the Democrats and Republicans. If the Republicans were going to be working towards a peace agreement, the Democrats were saying no. They were going along with Bolton, somebody who they despise otherwise. And that's quite a shame between the two parties. It didn't matter if, I mean, I don't like Trump. I didn't like his racism in this country. I didn't like anything. But when I saw that they were working towards a peace agreement, I thought, hell, give him credit for that and shut up. Let's create peace. Stop killing people. That would have been an important step forward. But it also made it sound like he had arranged it. It hadn't. President Moon and North Korea had come together, and the president, Moon, was actually very progressive and had gone to prison before, and is somebody who I think people need to understand. That was a movement by the people of South Korea pushing for that. And it wasn't the US arranging it. It wasn't Trump. Trump came in as an opportunist at that moment to build peace. And then everything in the United States was not just the Bolton. It was actually the Democrats and the whole out there. So I think that's something we have to talk about. If you could talk a little bit more about that kind of situation, would be greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for this film.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, I was a little bit distracted by what was happening on the screen.
Sorry, somebody was sharing and I had to share my screen to stop their share. And then sorry about that.
Okay. I thought it was me at first. Thank you for that. That's a really important point about the Democrats. They did side with Bolton, which was, hard to comprehend. And that was one of the things when in the film, when Donald Trump says, if I had made the deal, a lot of you would have said, I had given up or whatever. That was what he was referring to. And it's a real shame. I think that it was such an amazing opportunity as a Korean American who've been involved in these issues for a number of decades, past 20 years or so. It was such a moment of hope and potential. And to have it dashed in that manner was just was devastating, actually.
Mm-hmm. Bill, how about your question?
Unmute. Okay. Thank you, Ann and Deann, and your presentation was very informative and moving. But in our discussion, we were talking about sanctions. I just wonder why the U.S. persists in that, because sanctions very rarely work. They only create distrust and a barrier to useful peace negotiations. In many cases, we've had sanctions for 70 years on North Korea and Cuba, and they just don't work. I don't know, and they may have worked in South Africa, but nowhere else. I just wonder why we persist in that.
I don't know how to get on.
Well, I mean, I think there is a perception that sanctions are sort of the kinder alternative to war, but really it is another form of war. It impacts the civilians, it impacts the economic lives, infrastructure. It's clearly a part of the war arsenal that the US has been using. The question as to why, I'm not sure I can answer that, why the US continues to pursue it. It's a very good question.
I can answer that. As a U.S.
Yes, ma'am.
diplomat, we were told, it's better than killing people. Well, indeed, you kill people with sanctions too. It's just one of those terrible things that the United States continues to use, and even more aggressively now. And it's become so common that it just it just strikes at your heart of what's going on here. I want to just stop for a second. I've texted Woody Powell, another one of our Korean War veterans, to see if he wants to speak. Woody, are you there, and would you like to say something?
I see Woody Powell. I'm going to ask him to unmute.
Okay. Woody, would you like to say something?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. There's so many things going through my mind, and I thought that delegation was probably the most precious and wonderful thing I'd ever seen. You were so effective. I've been back to Korea 3 times on various missions, and none of which were anywhere near so effective. But I remember the first time I went there, I think it was 2000. I was kind of on my own, and I hooked up with the American Friends Service Committee and a wonderful woman by the name of Serafina Cha, who led me around Korea. And I remember on the plane going over, there was a movie showing South Korean troops getting lost in North Korea over the DMZ in a minefield, and North Korean troops talking them out of it and bringing them to safety. And then afterwards, the 2 groups began to party back and forth across the border. And it was a wonderful story. And it said to me that there was a real opportunity here for the rapprochement between North, and South. And it seems to have all gone downhill from there so badly. And I'm just really heartbroken about it. As Ann knows, I had a friend who was in the Chinese army, and that I met in China, who fought against us, and we became very, very good friends, and we wrote a book together, and I'm still in touch with his daughter, and she is just a wonderful, wonderful soul in China. And this is the kind of thing, these heart connections are so important. And I have very, very strong feelings about the opportunities that we've lost in Korea and that we've got to regain. And what you people did was, I think, can you do it again and again? Because it is. Anyway, I've said all I really need to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. As the film shows, the Women Cross DMZ, which was the main group in the beginning, has really developed and flourished into this global women's peace movement. And I would, encourage everybody to sign up for our mailing list at www.moofilms.org. And if it's okay with you all, I'd love to send you additional information as a follow-up to this conversation so that you can have additional resources to connect with some of these movements going forward, including Advocacy Week and some of the bills that are currently in Congress. Before, when Ann and I were talking about presenting the film at this convention, we had talked about asking local chapters to host the screening. And personally, my goal is that 50 Veterans for Peace chapters will screen the film over the next year or so. So please spread the word about the film among your networks and contact us, because we would really love to work with you to bring the film and share these resources with your communities.
And if I could just add that we would love to have delegations go to North Korea. However, starting under the Trump administration, they've put very strong restrictions on U.S. citizens going there. You have to apply for a special validation passport, and they're issuing just very, very few of them. Also, COVID is in the way. The North Koreans still are essentially a lockdown country. They are not allowing people in because of their lack of medicines, I think, really to treat COVID should it break out. Another one of the results of the sanctions, even though sanctions are not supposed to be about medical things, but they certainly are. I'd like to see if Stan Levin, another one of our Korean War veterans who's on. Stan, would you like to say something? Let's give him a minute to see if he's actually at his computer.
I'm here, Ann.
Good. Would you like to make a comment on the film?
Well, I just sent you a very brief email about that.
Okay, would you like to go ahead and talk about it while you're on?
I don't know. When I first went to Korea, I really thought we were doing the right thing. And I thought that for 50 years. But something was itching me. And along with my becoming a member of Veterans for Peace came a recognition of how deadly bad our international behavior has been. And the victims are always the same. Nobody who makes a rifle for a living is affected. Only his wife and his children are at risk now. I actually lost out to Jack Doxey on this spot. Didn't have the foresight to write anything down. My ignorance remains boundless. Anyway, I've been in and out of this room for a day or two, and I haven't caught everything, but I hope to. I just saw the last maybe 30 or 40 minutes of the film, and that's what my note was to you. And really appreciate you. You hear this too often, but you are one dynamite lady.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
I first met you in Jeju, you will remember. We were guarding the gate in chairs, and there was a security detail making sure we didn't misbehave. And the gate was locked to the incoming machinery and weapons, and we were in the way. So the security group, young guys who I know did not like the duty, they picked us up bodily in a chair and moved us off to the side. And I was sitting in a chair, and I turned my head around and I asked, "Are you the colonel?" And you replied, "Yes." I was just thrilled to meet you, and I'm more thrilled after all these years. But interestingly, when the required vehicles got through the gate and into the site where they were illegally building a major weapon of war for Korea, the grateful young men who were guarding us just kind of vaporized. They disappear, and we got up and we picked up our chairs and we moved them back to the gate and resumed activities. But that trip to Jeju was a highlight of my life. And you know, I'm going to be 93 now, and we accept the cash check or money orders, and I cannot honor your credit card. But I love the convention, and I'm happy nobody recognized my original mistakes with my banner, with my flags. I had not done that for about 70 years. So some things you just never forget.
well,
So
thank you,
I
Stan.
appreciate the whole thing.
Thank you. Stan opened our convention doing a semaphore with flags, because that's what he did when he was in the
Love that.
military. And we were wondering, did he really spell those words right or not? But Stan,
Well, I've been to college.
okay, let's
I
have
spelled them right by sometimes You know, I've had so many accidents in my life that one of my arms is pretty much non-functional, and I blame any spelling errors on my left arm.
Well, that could be dangerous. You could have gotten us into war with that left hand that didn't work so well.
But this is an invitation. This is an invitation. If I'm still vertical, and next year I would like to be invited to give it a shot to whoever's sponsoring the convention.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you.
Let's go on to Alice and Kara next.
Lower.
There they are.
Thank you. To Deann and Ann and others, Kamsamnida. Kamsamnida. Kamsamnida.
Thank you. Kamsamnida.
I was stationed at Osan Air Base from, I believe it was 1976, when that border incident happened between North and South Korea, when there was some member of the forward lookout post from North Korea came and roughed up the forward lookout from the South Korea side. And because there was a bush in the way, what happened is we had to have that bush down. And I remember all the, because I was invited on the alternate battle staff, and there was a lieutenant colonel from, we were stationed here together at Davis Mountain, and he was telling me the mind of how the United States was going to deal with that action from the North, and would take down the offending tree, the leaves, but leave the stock of the bush or the tree as a reminder. And after that incident, we were only about a minute away from bullets and so forth from being dropped from North Korea. If that happened, but it didn't, and I'm so glad. Anyway, after that settled down, there was an opportunity for those of us who wanted to go to the DMZ. We had to be in uniform, etc. We were told specific rules, and there was a guide telling us what had happened at the DMZ, and he went into a lot of detail about that. That was his last time to give that tour, because he was going to rotate back to his next assignment. Anyway, so that I was there during that time and was trying to understand some of the rationale about why the Korean War was never ended. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with the group as well. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much, Alice. Thank you. And we have one more comment. Lola, if you could make it short and sweet, and then we'll give the final comments to Deann, as we have only about 4 minutes left in our session. Go ahead,
Okay.
Lola.
10 seconds. Just again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So powerful, but not just powerful, so sensitive and filled with such heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Deann, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's just been a huge honor to be with you all today. It's one of the most meaningful events that we've had so far. And just thank you for being such an empathic audience. And I hope that we'll all have a chance to meet again, and in a local screening. And when we do have a national screening, I hope that you'll all watch the film again. I had a request to share the QR code one more time, so I'm going to just share that real quick so that you can get the information from this little postcard. And please feel free to email us here at crossings@movefilms.org. And I will be in touch if it's okay. I don't know if it's okay to get in touch with you all via email, but hopefully it is, to share more information about the film. But in the meanwhile, please feel free to email us anytime at crossings@movefilms.org. And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Deann, for a wonderful, wonderful film. Let's everybody give her a big round of applause. Yay.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the convention.
Thank you
Appreciate it.
very much. We certainly are. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care, everyone. Thanks,
See
Jules. for
y'all
keeping us on track.
of course. See y'all in the next session, which is meditation. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.